Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for all the wonderful blessings that you have bestowed upon us. We thank you that we're able to go to the church of our choice. We all had wonderful church services yesterday. We want you to watch over, guide us, give us direction to make good travel decisions for our people. Be with all of us. We ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councilor Fulbright. Roll call. Shelley?
Joe Bird.
Aye.
John Garvin.
Aye.
Gil Anglin.
Here.
Jack Baker.
Here.
Julia Coates. Jody Fishinghop. Meredith Fraley. Janelle Fulbright. Present. Frankie Hargis.
Present.
Chuck Hoskin Jr. Hannah Glory Jordan. Lee Keener.
Aye.
Dick Lay.
Here.
Curtis Snell.
Here.
David Thornton. David Walkenstick. Kara Callan Watts.
Aye.
We do have a quorum.
We do have a quorum. This time I'll entertain the motion for approval of the minutes.
Make a motion to be approved.
Motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. We'll drop down the reports. Top of the League's Job Corps Career Services, Ms. Diane Kelly.
Thank you, Chairman Byrd, members of the committee. We are gearing back up over at Talking Lakes Job Corps. We were shut down for the freeze that was going on. Well, we got notification a couple of weeks ago that our numbers have been decreased for this next fiscal year. We're going from 250 down to 197. All the centers got cut in numbers. Some got cut. I think Guthrie got cut because of 250 to 300 students. So we didn't get it near as bad as they did. Our performance rating is still real good. We're having weekly conferences with the Dallas Regional Office and also with the National Office on our contract. It was extended up through August. Reason being is because the numbers changed. So when the numbers change, we have to go back in and redo our whole plan. So they're actually sending it back out for us to modify in accordance with the 197. Also, some of our staffing in our FTEs will change. They're making recommendations based on the numbers. So when we get those recommendations, some of those people some of them will be moved. There's 3 of them that have come over to my shop to work. So we helped Jay out so that way he didn't have any layoffs. Graduation, the National Office sent out an email that they're asking all the centers to look at having their graduation on August the 23rd. So that means that all the centers throughout the nation will be having their graduations on this particular day. Lieutenant Governor Todd Lamb has agreed to be our keynote speaker. So right now we're looking at Friday, August 23rd. You will be getting invitations. Love to have you come over. Our NAVTEP program, which is our business and clerical program, and our child care program, they're starting their review this week, and I hope you like the stationery that the students did for you. I guess you got it.
Yes, we did. Thank you.
Did you?
Yes.
Okay. Well, anyway, Miss Jones and her students did that, so we were trying to get it done before review started. Day trading started back up this past month, and summer youth started today, and I'll elaborate more on that in the Employment Training Committee at the end of the month. We have had lots of people coming in to our offices, and right now Jeff tells me that we've got 558 students on the Summer Youth Employment Program. And I want to personally thank all of you who came out and supported us at our GED graduations. I want to thank all of you all for your input with the information on the backpack program. We all have all that ready to go at the end of the month. And also appreciate y'all calling about some of the students and some of the schools. And I want to say that in all of our offices, everybody's been working around the clock. We've had counselors working all this weekend. They were working Saturday and Sunday to try to get those applications approved. We've got, I think, 2 counselors that their clients are probably not going to start this week because they're doing day work, and we've also doing the C&D referrals, and some of them had some illness in their family, and so we'll extend those an additional week. They'll still get the same amount of weeks. It's just that they're going to start later because we couldn't get their applications completed. We have a certain timeline that we have to put them in the system so they can actually get paid. And Michelle was working around the clock with us to try to get them all in there, but we just couldn't get them all done. When you're doing that and day work, We do payouts on Thursdays and Fridays where they work. We do payouts every day, but the bulk of them come in on Thursdays and Fridays. And we just couldn't get it done, but we tried. And I want to commend the staff because they worked around the clock. We've got the information on our testing labs. I think some of y'all had asked about that. The 3 areas where we will be able to test, you've got to understand that the state determines where the testing labs are. There were already established testing labs throughout the 14 counties in certain locations when we actually requested to be in a testing site. And the farther north you go, there was already testing labs in those areas. There's only 3 areas where we will actually have the testing. One is here, one is prior, because it's out at Cherokee Heights and it's our facility. And then we've got the one over at the complex at Stillwell, which is our facility. So we have to have the state come down and check those out, and those are the locations where the testing sites will be. We will be referring people to other locations where the testing sites have already been approved by the state in the other areas. And one of the reasons that we started our own testing was because of Talk and Leave Job Corps, because we have so many students that come through there that have to be tested before they actually go out for a performance rating. So that right there was one of the reasons why we got certified to do the testing. And as it evolved, it expanded into some of these other areas because we were actually using the VOTEX as well as some of the schools. Board of Keys testing, Stephanie wanted me to report that we have tested 2,844 people for Work Keys testing, which is the platinum, gold, silver, and bronze certifications for business and industry. And we rank 3rd behind Tulsa and Oklahoma City in the state of Oklahoma. So that says a lot for what the staff are doing in terms of getting people tested. Tonight, Daryl Legg will be in the Bonita area, and he was invited up there by a group to talk about reentry. And we have the Chickasaws, the Creeks, and the Oneidas out of Wisconsin that are coming down to meet with us. And then our group will go down to the Chickasaw Nation here in the next few weeks. They're looking at these reentry programs because there is dollars out there, and we are actually going to be trying to tap into some of those dollars so that it can assist us with some of the clients, because we do have an overabundance of clients coming in that fit that bill. Questions?
Questions for Johnny? Councilor Watt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you remind me again when the GED test changes by the state, that it gets harder, I guess? When is that?
It will be, I believe, July 1, Councilman Watts. The GED test is going to be even harder. We were doing it by paper, and we're having to go to computers. So we have to add computers in some of those locations.
Diane, is it correct that this time we are graduating about 50% that enter the program, GED?
Right now we are. Yes, we are.
And that's really a good number compared with the state. Is that?
Yes, it is. It's a very good number. In fact, I've asked George to give me a head count for the next meeting to let y'all know how many students that we've got in all those GED sites this summer. We were contacted by a lot of high schools because of the mandatory testing that high school seniors have to take. And we've been contacted by some of the counselors at some of the high schools. And we do have some of their students there in our GED sites, and some trying to get out of board so they can get the test so they can get their high school diplomas. So we are working with some of the schools.
Councilor Hurst?
Our GED graduation rate is actually higher than what we report here because of the non-Indians that we work with. So, because the federal dollars, we have to work with them, right? Then also, correct?
That's
and
correct.
Then we, so our graduation rate is actually higher than what we report here.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Councilor Garvin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Diane, I was able to contact all the high schools in my district except one. I had a question about how much are they going to get for the backpack programs.
Until I get all the numbers in, I really couldn't tell you.
That's kind of the answer I gave them.
Yeah, what we wanted to do was we had a list of what we got, and then there are certain council members that have contacted me and said, well, either United Way or Salvation Army or this church is doing it in our county. Well, they're not on the list, so what we've had to do is we've had to go back. So that was the reason why Gail sent you the information, because if you have a program out there that you know of, if you'll let us know, we'll make sure they get on the list. But when we compile this, we could leave somebody out, and if we do, it's not done intentionally. We're just trying to capture as many as we can and make sure that we get that money out there as soon as possible.
I'm short one high school, but I'll continue to try to reach them. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Counselor Snell? Oh, Counselor Philbright?
Okay, thank you. Okay, the only one I know of in Sequoia County is being run through the Boys and Girls Club. But does that qualify for this also? I mean, they go to various schools.
Yes, it does.
But they're not on the list. I didn't see them anywhere, so.
Well, if they're not on the list, that's why we're asking you if there is one that we don't have on the list. That's
So-
the list that we
Well,
compiled.
I was a little bit confused because I thought if it was just being run by the school, but if it's for any organization, right?
Yeah, because some of the counties, the schools don't mess with it, and the churches have picked up on that, and they're working with the schools, but the churches are the ones that are putting the food together for the background program.
Okay.
It varies from one county to the next. That's
Well,
why
is it too late
we
to turn
just-
in the names now?
I'm not taking names, we're just, if it's a program, we're just asking you to give us that information and we'll
Oh,
get the
okay.
numbers. If you give us that, we appreciate it.
Okay,
Councilman
that's what,
Fulbright.
thank you.
Any questions? Thank you, Diane. Good report.
Thank you.
Executive Director report, Dr. Gloria Sly.
Thanks, Chairman Byrd. Good afternoon, Councilman. Good evening. You had my report with you, and so if I'll answer any questions you might have.
Would you enlighten us on the new hire? I think that may be official now, the girls' coach there at Sequoia?
Yes,
Is that official? Is that a fair question?
It is official, yes, Mr. Callison will be coming on board, and, but it'll probably be like one,
Okay,
and then he'll be on board and working with us.
okay.
Yeah, it is
Thank you.
official.
Counselor Watt?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you know that in the upcoming budget, will you be including ACES chapters and the trip to ACES Nationals for kids throughout the 14 counties, as well as the Science and Engineering Fair?
We have included in this next budget the ACES chapters, but we're going to be doing competition within each county, and those winners will come to Cherokee Nation Science Fair as a national competition. So we're not, I know that we didn't have the amount of travel in our budget this year to take them to Alaska. So, and we're going to limit those trips.
So do you know how many kids you plan to fund to Denver in November?
No, we don't. It will depend on the budget, and it'll depend on the cost of the trip, because it's you know, with the fuel prices, airfare goes up and everything else, so it's very, I can't tell you at this moment.
Could you give me an idea of what's being proposed or something by email by the end of the week?
Surely.
And then I had a couple of other questions too, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
On your Cherokee language classes, could you notify the council people when those are brought into the district and maybe send a news release? Because I understand there's classes, but then we don't really have details, and then it takes forever to dig for them by the time half the class is done, and the folks are wanting to know about them. And then on your Cherokee Promise students, that program is being limited or shut down? I didn't understand the article. Could you explain what's going on with Cherokee Promise?
Okay, I can do that. Your question about the Cherokee classes in the communities, what we normally do with that is take an ad out in Cherokee Phoenix so that we can notify all the communities of where these are going to be.
We also posted, and we'll send you a list.
Or you can just send it to Gail and she can send it to all of us. 'Cause I'm sure
Well,
we have
we
people.
usually do a broadcast to all employees, but we will specifically send the council members a list of that.
Well, apparently we're not on that, I don't
Okay.
think, so.
Okay, we will do that. I assume that you were covered by it. And then, so that's for our Cherokee language classes. And then, for the other one, I'm sorry, I forgot now.
Cherokee Promise.
Cherokee Promise, it is being limited. We didn't have as many as we had at Northeastern for this upcoming year, and so it's not being limited in that sense, except by the numbers of students who participate, but the number is lower.
What was the article referring to, that they're not going to accept any more Promise students? Was that something else?
That was with the foundation,
Okay.
and the foundation was, they had proposed to fund students who were over income and who did not meet our criteria for Promise, for the Promise students, and so they weren't going to pick up any more. That wasn't Cherokee Nation.
Okay, I have one last question.
And wait. And then we've opened up a section of for Promise students over at Rogers State.
Right.
And that's limited to, because we don't know what kind of response we're going to have over there.
Okay, thank you. And then one last question. How's the new scholarship online application going? Because I know you changed software vendors, you separated it from the foundation, and I wasn't sure how it was going because I've been getting feedback of a little bit of frustration.
There is a little bit of frustration from the students because you have to complete the application at one setting. And that's been frustrating that you can't save it and then go back. But the counselors and the advisors are available by phone. All they have to do is pick the phone up, call them, and normally they can respond right away, but not
And that's during
always.
business hours only, right?
Right, but they can email at other times. So. But yeah, just business hours or phone calls.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And so we didn't limit the Cherokee Promise from the Cherokee Nation. We just limited those that were over income from the Cherokee Foundation.
From the Cherokee Foundation, yes, and that was their decision,
Okay.
not to fund anymore.
Okay. Any more questions from Dr. Slot? Very good report. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, and I have one more announcement to remind you that our higher ed applications the deadline for that is June 14th. So,
Okay.
all of your students. And then we had a question from Councilman Lay about the payment at OSU that need to be more timely. The student didn't have all their documents in. They still don't have all their documents in to pay for the spring semester. So, so when we get that, we'll do it. But beginning with the fall semester, we're going to try to ensure that colleges and universities get payment in a timely manner by paying an estimated cost of expenses up front, the beginning of the semester. Now, the students will have to submit their transcripts semester by semester in order to get funding, but we're going to pay it up front at the beginning of the semester.
That's good.
That should help.
That's good.
We hope.
That's good.
Yes.
Thank you.
And yes, and our non-Pell scholarships, remember, this is the continuous counties, those counties that touch Cherokee Nation. The Pell scholarships, the Pell and non-Pell scholarships, the students from those areas are eligible for our higher ed scholarships also. So just a reminder.
Dr. Slide, that's good news. That's a good report. You're still having 2 students in higher ed. One of the most difficult things is getting that certified transcript.
Yes.
That's difficult to get once they get that and the paperwork, because the students have to do some due diligence on their own.
Yes, they do, and especially once you get into college, we know that a lot of them have real difficulties that first semester.
Yes.
And a lot of them don't, finish. They have difficulty finishing that first year, and we're hoping
that with our college advisors and things, that we're going to try to up this number, and we're working with universities to put programs in place.
Well, we're glad to have you in that position, Dr. Slide. Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Head Start, I don't see a rep from Head Start.
Oh, excuse me, yes, Miss Thompson is on travel status. The National Head Start Conference is being held, and so you have her report. If there are any questions that I can try to answer for you, I will do so.
Okay. If we're still number one, that's good.
We're still number one.
Okay.
And they're expecting a visit any time between now and October 30th, I believe it is, for national, review. So.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right, next we have with us Culture Tourism, Miss Molly Jarvis.
Thank you, Chairman Burr. Good afternoon, Council. This is the quarterly report for cultural tourism. And you have the report just to mention that we are in the peak, or the peak of the tour season for the summer. And the spring we had a really successful, I think this was the highest number of students we had come through on our education tours. More than, more than 800 students came through on the education tours. We continued to work with CADA to bring in some community tours, and those are free to community groups who contact us and work with us to come on those tours. And then on our business side, more the business side, we do have 18 coaches booked to come through. Those are bank travel groups or just tour and travel groups that are coming through on tours right now. A couple of other things to mention. I'm working with a group, and specifically with Diane, on the NCAI that will be in Tulsa in the fall. And then when we had the intertribal meeting at the Hard Rock a month ago or so, the tourism group kind of met away. There isn't really a tourism committee, so the group of us from the 5 tribes just met separately, and we are working on some initiatives there, and I can keep you abreast of those and let you know what's going on. We haven't developed plans, but we're going to meet on our own and develop hopefully a campaign that will feature our state our way. Instead of the state that's come out with a new campaign. You've probably seen that, but we feel like we can represent ourselves a little better that way. And then we are also hosting this year's IANTA, which that stands for American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association. And we're hosting that at Hard Rock this year, and we will send you more information about it, but just to get it on your calendars, it's September 22nd through 25th. And we'll be hosting tribes from around the nation and talking about just tourism and economic development efforts there.
Molly, on the intertribal,
Yes.
what it sounds like you've already taken an initiative. What you might do is just form that little work group
Yes.
and let us take the lead in it.
Okay.
And for you guys' information, Molly and I were discussing before this meeting. In the past few council meetings, if you remember, I have asked our CEO, Sean Slayton, why the Cherokees do not make an attempt to tell our story like the Chickasaws do in telling their story. And every now and then somebody will call me and say, that's a good idea. But Molly and I discussed that early on, and we may be off with the initiative here to really make that a fulfillment and get some of our national treasures, some of our people actually tell the Cherokee story. We've got a great story to tell, and I'm glad that you're going to take that initiative.
Sure.
Any more questions for Molly? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Dropping down to old business.
I'd like to make an amendment to the agenda and have our president, Jill Wynn, come up for discussion about possible.
I was going to allow her to speak after the two discussion items, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
I forget to say it.
Okay. So you still want me to agenda? Or I was going to let you. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Counselor Lay, did they address your?
That's been addressed, and thank you, Dr. Sly. I appreciate that information, so I'd like to withdraw that.
Okay. Counselor Watts?
Mr. Chairman, this was of interest to me too, so could I ask what was addressed and if there were any changes made?
On the direct studies?
Yeah, because right now we're only funding 14, and I feel like there's a huge demand both on our end and on the students' end, especially in medical. And I don't know if that's where Councilman Lane was headed or not, but it's been on the agenda and people were interested and wanted to know.
Okay.
Well, if I could just state what
Sure.
my question was,
Okay.
and perhaps I didn't get into the things that you wanted to get into. My question was, we seem to be like at least 60 days late in getting tuition payments. And sometimes it's for the student in turn the right stuff in. Sometimes it's not. And I wondered if that could be what happens, especially with these medical students, and I may have beat this horse before. They're under the gun scholastically and academically anyway. And when they start getting notices that their tuition hasn't been paid, and you're not going to get your grades if it's not paid on time, and there may be a late charge, they get a little antsy. But I think Dr. Sly has answered my question, and I'm satisfied.
Very good, thank you. Thank you, Councilman Lane, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Does that satisfy?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Counselor Watts, is that?
Yes, sir, thank
Okay.
you.
The next is an act relating to funding for Cherokee Nation Head Start program. Madam Speaker?
Yes, this is number 2 on our agenda. We have had our council attorney working along with Dr. Sly and I believe Verna Thompson and several others working on the wording of this act and taking into consideration, if you'll notice, Part B of Section 3 says that this funding shall be funded through the Cherokee Nation General Fund, subject to the constitutional requirements of availability of funding, because we didn't want to run afoul of our constitutional requirements. But basically what this would do, we have the #1 Head Start program in the country that traditionally has only been funded by federal funds at a level of 80%. They've always had to have a 20% match of some kind. This act would provide that, subject to our funding and our ability to fund, that we would always try to provide them 10% of whatever the federal funding was, so that would get them to a level of 90%. And that would allow them to stay competitive for their teaching positions and some of their other positions within their department. And I would put that in the form of a motion.
Second motion.
Discussion, have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Thank you for making time to address that so that it was clear, and I would like to be added as a co-sponsor if they are willing to add me.
Okay.
I'm just confused on the wording again. But the federal funding's at 80%,
Yes.
and if we fund at least a 10% cash match of the federal funding, that'll give them 8%, won't it? 10% of 80% is 8%. You see what I'm
If
saying?
we added 12%, would that get them to? How do you
No.
figure? I'm going to have to defer to some of our statisticians in here.
12.5% of the 80.
Would.
Okay.
Yes, I
Make it
would.
friendly? I would accept that friendly to move that to 12.5% of federal funding, and I'm advised by Mr. Baker, who knows his numbers, that will get us to a 90% position. Okay.
Legal?
We would still need to say at least, so that if they get a bigger budget cut, that it may.
Yes.
So keep the at least.
Yes, we're just
Yes.
changing that one
Yes.
percentage point.
Just making that.
Okay.
Okay, there's our.
Okay.
Joe, you may have a comment.
Well, we've already done it, so,
But we may need you, Mr. Reed.
yeah,
so-
stay around.
So I have a motion and a second.
And we had 2 added sponsors. Others may want to be added.
Okay. Is anyone that does not want to be added as a sponsor, raise your hand.
I have a question first.
Okay, question, Councilor Brandon?
What is the projection of the amount of funding that over a 5-year period? What is the amount of the projection of funding that we will need to fund to cover this over a 5-year period?
They may experience, and I may have to get Dr. Sly up here, but I think they're going to experience in this next year an 8%,
Yes.
at a minimum, an 8% cut from federal funds, which would probably knock us down around maybe 600, right in that area.
Jody, do you have that projected?
Well, kind of back to that one question, as far as the 80%, the other 20% is in-kind funding that they're receiving. So, they receive X dollars federal funding, and we're looking at doing a 10% match against that. I think they're right now they're somewhere around the 800,000 or 8 million range for the year, so it'd be around 800,000.
I know we live
per year.
but unless the
right.
feds cut it, that.
Right, if they
what we
get
think they're gonna
cut,
cut it.
it'll go down.
And I might tell you, we canvassed other tribes. The Chickasaws routinely are putting about $3 million into their program. Every tribe that we have canvassed puts more money into their program than the Cherokees, yet we have more children than most of them combined. So we have not provided funding for this program on a level that across Indian country has been done.
So this, I have the floor, right?
Yes.
So this funding will be budgeted through the education department, or how? I'm not clear, sorry, how this will all come about.
Yeah, it would be through the normal process. Like last year, Head Start was funded, the current year right now, that was $400,000.
Okay,
This would
make
put
it
us,
800,000.
right, be approximately 800,000 at their current level of funding. If their level of funding goes down, this match would go down dollar-wise also.
800,000 for 5 years?
No,
Each
per
year.
year.
We can't predict a solid
Yeah, I know.
number
Right.
because of the federal funding is
I'm just trying to get
yeah.
a projected amount.
Right, it'd be approximately 800,000 a year
Okay.
at their current level of funding.
And this is a 14 county area program.
Mhm.
Okay. Councilor Frey, you still have the floor.
No, that's all I needed, thank you.
Councilor Watt?
Oh,
You good?
yeah, actually I did. So you prompted another question. That, if I recall correctly, and I'd forgotten about this, in Head Start, they require an in-kind match that we can't get away from. So that's anticipated as the overall formula. Can we, I don't want to, from what I recall on the in-kind match, it's very good that the public has to come in and leadership has to interact with our children. I don't want to give that up. But can they count that cash towards in-kind? Like, where are we getting into federal regulations around Head Start?
That's a possibility. It's going to have to be researched further as far as whether we can use this 10% as part. If we get in, but I think the intent is not to go that, in that
Jody,
direction.
will you research that
Yes.
and get us an impact sheet, like the cheat sheet on it?
Okay.
And will it change what their requirements are by the feds as well? I'm not saying we need to stop it, I'm still supporting it,
Right.
but we need to know what are those consequences.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that good?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Everybody good with that? Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. You get that, Shannon? Okay. We have in the new business, done announcement. Before we do that, we have a lady that's over JOM at Union Public Schools. And I didn't amend the agenda, but I was going to let her say just a brief, you have about 5 minutes to go over your program.
I still want the lady that talks. I'm coming here today as a representative of the National Johnson O'Malley Board. I'm Jackie White. I represent 21 states and 66,000 Native American youth across the United States. Jerry Brandon is from the Creek Nation, and she's my cohort in crime. About 7 months ago, as Chairman Byrd said, and it's hard for me to call you that because I look around the room and I know some of these people long term. I've been in education for almost 40 years. But as a National Johnson O'Malley Board member, I was looking at the information I had been receiving in regard to that committee. When I was appointed to the board, we made an initiative to get out there and reach our schools and our chiefs and et cetera. I know Councilor Watts has been in my district and did a wonderful job as I was driving through a tornado. She's talking to my senior kids. But what I did discover was a lot of the national programs through JOM we're not reaching out to all of our kids. I feel like I could talk on everything that you guys have talked about because that's what I do for a living. But what I discovered is not all schools have someone that cares as much as about Native American youth as I do. So what we're asking, I've sent letters to all 39 tribes. We're asking that every tribe in Oklahoma and across the entire United States join us as we lobby in Washington. Steve Pruitt, who is an attorney through J.C. Watts, as well as one of his council ladies. We spent all week in Washington during spring break lobbying for Native American youth. We currently have the National Congress Association of Indians, the National JOMA, the NIEA, and the Tribal Education Department's National Association lobbying with us. Because as you just heard, the feds are looking at cutting budgets for students and Head Start and et cetera, anywhere from 5 to 10%. It's all over the board. I will tell you that because I got a new adjustment on yesterday. As of after the week that we lobbied, they were looking at leaving Johnson O'Malley money alone and looking at 1.2% cut for us because what we brought to their attention was you have our CALC has been capped since 1995. You've not allowed us as public schools and tribal entities to add money to that funding. You have to remember that JOM funding goes to students. A lot of the other organizations do not support programs outside. They're more of a program. We're looking at kids. I look around this room. I know David was a part of a JOM program. I'm sure many of you in this room are. And as we look across the United States, we are becoming leaders. We are making a difference. So I'm coming to you as the Educational Committee saying, we need your support. We've already approached the Creek Nation, and I made Chairman Byrd aware of that, and they are joining our initiative to go to Congress to say money that goes for Native American youth needs to stay there because they're our future. If they don't go to dental school, or if you don't have higher ed reimbursement, I know those problems. I have grandchildren that are Native American, and you spoke, they don't know what to do. They go off to college and they forget the form. I know that Chairman Watts was with us. I have a full-time counselor in my district. That's what she does. We have reduced our dropout. Our kids are going to college. I had 15 go to Lawrence. I outdid Tulsa Public. For me, Union, that was great, but we want to get beyond here. We want to reach out to all of the Cherokee youth across the entire United States. And I'm asking you as an educational committee to support our efforts as we go forth dealing with Washington. I will tell you, we went to every office of everyone that would listen to us. And we already have 2 initiatives that they've already pushed and have passed. The BIA, if you've ever been a part of a public school, we do child counts every year. No one was turning our child count into Congress, and they thought we didn't need the money. Well, now they have a mandate that somebody in the BIA office must take our child counts, and turn in a report to Congress every single year to validate that our kids need this funding and that they're an important part of Congress initiatives and as they do legislation. I have all kinds of documents, but I don't want to bore you, but 3 big things we've asked for. Forward funding. Washington tends to pay schools after school starts. Well, if you're in Oklahoma, you know every school in Oklahoma is losing funding. So we've asked that we get our federal money up front. It's called forward funding. That is no different than Title I, Title II, limited English. All the funding that public schools get, we're asking for that to be forward funding. That includes tribes. Number 2, we've asked them to unfreeze the cap. We've added already 1,940 additional names in our initiative to count every child that is federally recognized. And we've also asked for increased funding. Do not cut us because you have froze our funding since 1995. And I will tell you, I've been a part of this. It's a lot of work, but as your representative, and I am Cherokee and member of the Trail of Tears, and have gone to Georgia with the Nancy Ward group. I've visited with you, and my staff was, and you need to know, Council, they thought she was cool. That's what the kids came back and told me. She's cool. Well, you know what?
Well, we think she is too.
We think she is too. But
They heard her oath down there.
But understand,
That's on record.
that she became a mentor and someone that my young ladies can see that you can be on council. It's not just for the guys, it's for the ladies as well. So we're working really hard to make a difference, and I want to represent you well. He said 5 minutes. I'm just pleased that David visited my office. I'm really trying to make a difference and support you and represent you well.
Okay, if we would make our questions short, interfering with somebody else's committee,
Right.
and I usually don't do that. This matter is the first time I've ever gone over.
Okay.
So we
I
may
will
have
stop.
questions. If you have a question for her, we could have you ask her after the meeting. Because I fudged on the agenda the way it was, but we will allow 2 questions. Councilor Watts?
So this is for action. Do you have a resolution that we need to get passed
Well,
at next month's meeting?
She can leave us that information
Yes.
and share it with Gail,
Okay.
and then we will review it.
Okay.
And then, Mr. Chairman, are you going to ask her to work with our,
We can work with Dr. Sly and run it through her.
okay. And will there be a report back on what we end up doing?
At Cherokee Nation, we can report for everything we do, I think.
It can be just in the
Hey, I work
writing.
for public schools.
Yes.
It's no big deal.
Yeah, it's like keeping stats.
It's like keeping stats. Hey, raised by a coach. I can do that too.
Absolutely. As a former coach, I concur with that.
I can do.
Thank you,
Councilor-
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you
Councilor
very
Garber?
much.
I just want to point out that Jackie's from Chakota.
She is?
And her father is Truman Dixon, one of the all-time coaches.
He's in the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
And
Okay.
still fishes and hunts and going strong at 87.
Thank you for the
Thank you for
report.
your
If
time.
you pursue the JOM initiatives as you would your playing days at Chakota Lady Wildcat, I think we will go a long way.
No difference. I may be older, but I've not changed.
Thank you very much.
Thank
With
you.
that, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
They were so